Staying healthy in ministry is vitally important to fulfilling the God-given purpose for your life. Let's continue to hear more about how we can stay financially healthy.
Hi, I'm Don Headley, Executive Vice President at AG Financial. And this is the third video of the called video series, Healthy Pastors, in which I've had the opportunity to discuss your financial health. Just to recap, in the first video, we discussed the importance of savings and the difference between short-term and long-term savings, along with why having an emergency fund is very important. The second video was all about retirement planning and why it is so important to make sure you have a retirement account set up as early as possible. Today, we have entitled this video, Personal Finance 101, and we will focus on some of the basics such as credit cards, renting versus buying, the importance of having a will, and why life insurance isn't just for older people. I remember when I got married and was planning to leave on my honeymoon, I went into my local bank and I bought traveler's checks. Yeah, some of you are laughing. Many of you have probably never heard of these. And I used those while we were traveling. I didn't have a credit card, and this was the best and safest way to travel without carrying all cash. Well, fast forward 35 years later, and traveler's checks are a thing of the past, and credit cards are the most widely accepted form of payment for almost everyone. We live in a cashless society, and now mobile wallets, payment apps like PayPal, Venmo, and debit and credit cards have become the norm for most transactions. With so many choices, you must make good decisions as to what is the best way for you to make purchases. When it comes to credit cards, you need to be really honest with yourself and ask yourself some hard questions. Does your personality type lend itself to owning a credit card? If you lack discipline, you should probably stay away from credit cards. Without the proper discipline, credit cards can quickly fulfill a lot of short-term wants and desires, but creates long-term debt that is expensive and hard to pay down. Plus, the interest charged on any outstanding balances on your credit cards is extremely high and quickly adds to your overall debt. However, if you're debt adverse and have discipline, credit cards can be a nice convenience, especially with all the unique point options and cashback rewards that are now available. If you routinely pay your expenses every month and have margin in your bank account, then credit cards are not a bad thing. Properly utilizing credit helps you to establish a credit score, and with timely payments can certainly increase your credit score. You might ask what a credit score is and why is it so important? Your credit score is determined by how well you pay your outstanding debt, such as student loans, car loans, mortgage loans, credit cards, and other monthly obligations. What is considered a good credit score? 670 to 739 is considered good, above 740 is very good, and above 800 excellent. Obviously, any score below 670 would have a negative impact on you. Something to keep in mind, credit scores may often be used by employers when they are considering a new employee. Credit scores provide a good segue as we move into the next area of discussion, as we focus on the question of when should I consider buying a house as opposed to renting? As we think about this question, one thing that is certain is not having a good credit score may not even give you the option of buying or renting. However, having a good credit score will often give you lower borrowing rates, which can save you a significant amount of money over a long period of time. So, buying or renting? How do you know what is the best option for you? I don't think there's always a 100% right or wrong answer when you look at buying or renting, but I do believe that you must make the decision based on what is best for you and your current situation. Renting can often get a bad reputation because you have nothing to show for all the rent you might pay. However, renting can provide you with additional time to build up more cash to put into a home purchase. Also, depending on how long you anticipate living in an area could help you determine which route to go. If you anticipate living in an area for a short amount of time, it may make more sense to just rent for that time period. When buying a home, there are many costs beyond the mortgage that you must build into your budget. Property insurance, property taxes, utilities, and ongoing maintenance. These can add a significant amount, more to your monthly mortgage payment. It is important to estimate all those expenses to be sure you can adequately cash flow the expenses and maintain your savings. When looking into buying a home, it is important not to rush and to go into too much debt. I remember my years of working in a bank and seeing young couples come in to get their first loan on their first home. They would often want to start at the same level of home that their parents currently own and take on more debt than they could comfortably afford. They forgot that their parents had to start at a lower price point at one point also when they started out, and it took them time to get where they are now. So just because you can qualify for a higher dollar loan amount doesn't always mean that is in your best interest to take it. Often banks and lenders will offer to lend you more than you should be willing to borrow. So use wisdom in determining how much debt you should take on when buying a home. Buying a home can definitely increase your net worth, and in most cases, a home is an appreciating asset, meaning it increases in value over time, whereas something like a car is a depreciating asset that loses value over time. These are just a few things to consider when making the decision to buy or rent. And remember, it's not what anyone else is doing that matters, but what is the best scenario for you. Let's change gears, and I want to discuss with you over the next few minutes why having a will and life insurance is vitally important to you and your spouse and your family. First of all, I am not an attorney, but want to share some good practices that I believe are important to be aware of when it comes to making sure your assets are protected if something should happen to you. It is important for everyone to have a will, especially if you have minor children. A will can be used to recommend to the court who you would like to have as guardianship for your children in the event something happens to you and your spouse. If you don't have a will, then the courts have no guidance as to who should be appointed guardian for your children. A will also notifies the probate court who you would like to be your executor and to whom executor should distribute your assets to. It is important to note that any asset you have that has a beneficiary or transfer on death provision goes outside of probate and directly to the intended recipients. Beneficiary and transfer on death provisions are the easiest and least costly way of making sure your largest assets get to where you want them. Things such as life insurance, vehicles, checking and savings accounts, and your retirement accounts. It is common for individuals to change their will over time and make adjustments accordingly based on things such as age of children, death of a spouse, death of other family members, and financial circumstances. This reminds me of a story I once heard of an elderly gentleman that had to get new hearing aids because he wasn't hearing well. Went to his doctor, got the new hearing aids, and the doctor said, try those out for a couple weeks and come back and let us know how they work out. Well, he went home, and a few weeks later he came back, and the doctor said, well, how are you getting along? And the gentleman said, perfect, they're working great. The doctor said, well, I'm sure your family must be extremely pleased that you can hear so well. And he said, well, actually, I didn't tell them, but I have changed my will 5 times in the last 2 weeks. So as important as a will is, many would argue life insurance is also very important because planning for the unexpected is necessary, especially if you are married and or have children. The proper amount of life insurance is debatable, and depending on your age, number of children, and total amount of debt will help determine the amount that would be necessary. Be aware that since they earn a commission, some insurance agents want to sell you the largest policy possible, even though you might not need it. Proper amount can be determined by how much debt you have, as well as if you want to have money available to pay for your kids' education. Some recommend 10 years worth of your annual income, so if your annual income is $50,000, you would want to look into a policy for around $500,000. There are several types of insurance, but to keep things simple, a term policy may often be the best and most affordable choice. Term covers for a set period of time, such as 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. Once the term is up, the coverage ends. Term insurance can be used during the years your kids are dependent on you. As you continue to save and invest and your assets grow, you will eventually reach an age when you don't need as much insurance or maybe any. Since your assets can now pay any expenses if you pass and your children may be older and college is behind them. In conclusion, I hope that this information has been helpful and practical. If I can leave you with one final thought, it's to continue to be good stewards with what God has entrusted you with as you place Him first in your finances. Your financial health is important, and if we at AG Financial can ever be of help, please feel free to reach out at any time to one of our team members. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and make sure you check out the other videos in this Healthy Pastor series. I'm praying for you as you continue in ministry that God will give you wisdom in all that you do. God bless.